Hi, my name is Monty. I'm the host and author of My Words, Our Journey, the podcast. If you remember from last episode, Kay and Trent were getting acquainted. The wedding rehearsal went fine, and we were in the middle of the rehearsal dinner when Trent asked Wanda to do him a favor. Let's start today and see what that favor was. Chapter 46. How low can you go? Can I have everyone's attention? Wanda used her sash as a microphone. I think it's time to liven things up a bit. We're going to start a game of limbo. 2 rows, one for 13 and under, and well, the second for everyone else. Can I have Amber, Tyler, and Leonardo join me, since Mr. Stevens already volunteered you three? And I'll need one more. Oh, I forgot. He also volunteered William. Where's William? William almost dropped his drink. Trent had been watching, but he recovered and seemed pleased to be part of something. Kay spoke to one of his men. They immediately went to his table, and then everyone able moved to the two lines to take part in the games. The music was varied between two DJs, one from the Lodge and one from XK593. All the music was upbeat, and the crowd loved it. Stacy came over and thanked the two husbands for cooking burgers and hot dogs, then excused herself so she could go play as well. Trent watched as she laughed and giggled with Leonardo and the kids. Kay noticed too. Your family really likes my doer. Trent did not know if it was a question or just a statement. Either way, he replied, Yes, we find him delightful. Kay replied with only a grunt. As the games were being played, Kay and Trent ran through the hot dogs and the hamburgers, drinking while they worked. When the lines thinned, Kay suggested they step out back. One of his security team handed him 2 cigars. Trent, you've never had a cigar like this. I'd stake my life on it. The two men stood silent for some time. Just them and the security detail, which had moved off a bit. Finally, Kay asked, Do you feel like there's going to be a problem while I'm here? It's the only thing keeping me up at night, so I sure hope so, or I've been worried for nothing. Kay took a deep drag off his cigar and then began to laugh so hard Trent thought for sure they could be heard inside. Well, I hope not to disappoint you, my new friend. Trent never would have said such a thing without the alcohol, but he was pleased at how it had gone over. Before they could say anything else, Tyler came through the door. Everyone wants to see you two go head to head at Limbo. They could now hear the crowd inside chanting, How low can you go? How low can you go? Chapter 47. The morning of the big event. Trent could hear his family buzzing around. He could tell by the light coming through the second-story window. She should be up by now. But he had drank like a college sophomore with nothing better to do the following day than to sleep it off. Instead, he and his team were expected to pull off what many, would consider the most important wedding ever, without the father of the bride being killed. Stepping into the shower, he could hear Stacy call from downstairs, letting him know he'd better be getting dressed. They needed to be out the door in 20 minutes. Great. Who plans a pre-wedding breakfast anyways? He thought as he put his head under the hot water. 19 minutes later, the family was walking out the door. The conversation on the walk over to the tents that had been set up in the common area was about adopting a pet. More specifically, a dog that Stacy had mentioned the previous evening. Tyler and Amber were not going to let it go. Trent loved pets. He really did. He just liked petting and giving them treats, then handing them off to whoever their owner was. No mess to clean up, no dirty carpets, no torn furniture, etc. The tents were spaced, so everyone could walk through the double-sided buffet line without clutter or chaos. The food was labeled in both languages, with descriptions. The kids had already predetermined they were going to be open-minded and try some of the dishes from 593. A fact their mother nicely reminded them of when they came upon what looked like a pot of spoiled soup with wrinkled eyeballs and lips floating in it. The nice card placed in front stated it was a delicacy, only enjoyed on special occasions, and was thought to bring good health to those that partook. Leonardo had joined the family and was more than excited to see the stew available. He took a large salad bowl and scooped until it was nearly filled to the top. Tyler half joked their new friend would be sitting at a table on the other side of the room. Leonardo didn't seem to hear. He was already dipping his finger in the broth and licking it. Tyler had not noticed until Stacy nudged them, the bride and groom, still dressed in black from head to their toes, with their backs turned, sat at a table for two. Trent did not like to judge others. and he was certainly going to be exposed to a lot of different customs while their stay at the lodge. But this was just the opposite of what he would consider a wedding experience should be. While finishing his second bowl of stew, Leonardo explained it was a very ancient custom that had not been exercised in generations, but Mr. Smith had insisted. Once he had read in an old book Licura had given him as a gift, he was obsessed with the idea. Before the family could ask any more questions, William and Wanda came up to the table. After Trent praised them for the amazing job they had done, everyone settled back in and the conversation switched in a heartbeat when Wanda said, "So, I hear your family may be getting a dog." Trent had to excuse himself before he choked on the piece of sausage he had just stuck in his mouth. As he stood off to the side, he took in his surroundings. He had been in contact with all departments throughout the morning. Everything was going fine. No issues, no disturbances, no monster with a laser gun coming out of the woods. Something was bothering him, though. He just couldn't put his finger on it. It was the stress? Was it the drinking? That question would have to wait. Kay and his entourage were heading his direction. Kay, dressed in his formal battle attire, was a sight to behold as he walked in step with his security team. If he was worried, he didn't show it. "Are you ready to make history today, my friend?" Trent felt the power as Kay squeezed his shoulder. "I'm ready for a limbo rematch. That replaced anything else that may have been keeping me up at night." Kay bellowed, then simply replied, "Maybe I'll drink a little more this evening. Try to even the odds, as your people say." Chapter 48. The Nuptials. The crowd had been moved from the common area to the great hall. The place was breathtaking. Sculptures, flowers, the music. It was perfect. Everyone seemed pleased. Stacy reminded Trent it didn't hurt that various versions of Bloody Marys and mimosas had been flowing for the past couple hours, and several guests had topped theirs off before they even entered the building. Trent walked with his family and Leonardo. Kay and his family had already made their way in earlier to prepare for the nuptials. As they waited their turn, Trent took the time to talk to Leonardo about something he just couldn't get off his mind. He did not get the answer he wanted. So he pulled his friend aside and told the family to hold their seats. When done, Leonardo understood the task and went one way and Trent the other to be with his family. The night before had given Trent a sense of how much time they would have before the part of the service he was concerned about took place. The math didn't work in his mind, but Leonardo assured him he could make it work. It was hard to focus on what Stacy would say was a beautiful ceremony until it wasn't, when they discussed it later. The moment was at hand, no sign of Leonardo. Trent was not sure what to do. If he was right, well, that was one thing. But if he was wrong, he could ruin everything. What was that little voice telling him? Make the move? Wait one more minute? Leonardo had been so sure he could make it. The parties were taking their places. It was time. He'd have to make a decision, one based on his gut because his accomplice had either run into trouble or just ran out of time. Kay had stood and moved to the center of the aisle. Licura approaching from the left, Mr. Smith to her right. The three would embrace, in a moment representing the father giving the daughter to her husband. Trent had made his decision, and as he took his first motion to stand, there he was, Leonardo, bright red. Trent moved to the center aisle, moved quickly. Kay's security team had no time to react. Trent had tackled Kay from behind and landed on top of him with a thud. Then he heard the deadly screams as two assailants engaged the formidable team from XK593. The whole thing lasted less than 2 minutes. Mr. Whitmore. From his seat in the back of the room, he could do nothing but watch as the action unfolded. He would later take credit for the hiring of the qualified GM, but that was as close as he could get to any kind of glory. Stacy was horrified as she watched her husband jump on the back of the father to the bride and one of the universe's mightiest warriors. Her first thought was, please don't let him die. Her second was, well, we're going to have to move again. She couldn't help it. It was just a natural reaction to think about her family. Amber watched in horror as her dad lay atop Kay, Leonardo swiftly moving from side to side, moving guests back, away from the melee. He had tripled in size at this point, focused and determined to make sure no one was hurt on his watch. He was a deeper shade of red she had ever seen. Tyler watched as the two men in black fought bravely against the security team from XK593. They were outmatched. and had to know they couldn't win. But they continued. He was enthralled by the fighting and the skill involved. William was about to have a heart attack. He liked his new boss, didn't want him to die during his first real event. His heart may have been racing for another reason as well. The lovely Wanda had taken his hand and was as close as she could get as they watched the action unfold together. Everything happened so fast. There was no time for anyone to think, really. The security team had done what it was trained to do. Leonardo had had time on his way back to figure out his role. Trent had done the only thing he needed to do to save a life. The rest of the crowd was in shock when the fighting stopped, and the two figures lay on the floor, one the beloved leader to many in the room. Kay stood in disbelief, finding himself in that rare moment when he wasn't sure what to do. His only question, how is my daughter? Chapter 49. The Plan. It was nothing anyone could have seen coming. There may have been signs, things one could point to when it was over and all the facts were in. But the word blindside was used often over the next few days, and it fit. When Trent had asked about the book Mr. Smith had read regarding XK593's history, the answer was familiar. Trent had been given the same book by Mr. Whitmore. While Trent didn't have a photogenic memory, he was pretty good. And there was no mention of the bride and groom dressed in all black and sitting at a table with their backs to their families. He would have certainly remembered that. So, while everyone else was getting situated in the great hall, Leonardo ran to the cottage, where he found Lucura bound and gagged in the closet, unharmed but scared, hungry, thirsty, heartbroken. She would later tell of how Mr. Smith had drugged her. When she had woke, she was bound, gagged, and eventually told a story that broke her heart in so many ways. Mr. Smith, with no emotion, told of his abduction while working on a secret mission for the U.S. government, how he had been missing for nearly 10 years, during which time he had been broken down and then rebuilt, trained in the ways of the Rakaha, the mighty warriors of planet RKH-317, warriors known to do anything for the right price. They were known to brainwash, train the stolen for purposes near and far. They had been played plenty well to use one such weapon they had placed, years earlier, within the walls of the lodging place. The U.S. government had debriefed Mr. Smith the best they could when he showed up randomly at a military base almost 10 years after his disappearance. They had no reason to believe he was a weapon sent back to be activated when the time was right, but that's exactly what he was. It would be determined that the leaders of Q and their allies on Zerminian had contacted the leaders of Rem Kaha and had paid greatly for the services and inevitable death of one Mr. Smith. It was also determined that somehow he had smuggled an outsider, an assassin, onto the premises at some point and had kept him in hiding until the time was right. The ancient ritual of black coverings had been real, just hadn't been mentioned in the book. So Mr. Smith, it was believed, had been told this information by another source, one that knew it would be the best way to get close to their target. It almost worked. Chapter 50. Stay. It was several hours later before word got back to Trent and his team. Kay had made the decision to stay one more day. He would like to proceed with the festivities. Instead of a wedding celebration, they would like to celebrate new friendships. Quickly, the staff removed anything remotely reminding them of a wedding, and within 2 hours of the notification, everyone was again partying with their special guests. In what world would the events of earlier take place, and then be followed by a huge party? Trent thought, as he watched William and Wanda dancing, Leonardo spinning and turning himself different colors to the beat of the music while the children laughed and giggled. His kids were standing in the center of the dance floor with some of their friends, not really dancing, but more swaying as they laughed and talked. The food was excellent, the music upbeat, beverages flowed. It was strange to him. 2 lives had been lost, one that many thought they had known for many years. Still, the party went on. Stacy had excused herself to take care of the animals in her care and promised to be back as soon as she could. Kay caught him wondering how Mr. Smith had smuggled in the killer. I know you'll figure it out, my friend. Tonight, we drink until we meet again. How does everyone know what I'm thinking? He thought before Kay handed him another one of his special cigars. Let's talk outside, Kay spoke as he turned. The next morning, the line to wish the guests safe passage home was long. Everyone that could be there was. It was a relief to many to have them gone, to be honest. To return to normal for at least a short time before the next big thing. But oddly, it felt unfinished to some. Only one vessel was left. It was for Kay and his family. The goodbyes had been shared, promises they would return after the war had been given, and only Kay and Leonardo remained aboard. It was then that Kay looked at his doer and said one word, "Stay." Everyone looked at each other. Could they really heard what they thought they heard? Trent had not even told Stacy in case Kay changed his mind at the last minute. But the night before, he and his new friend had spoken outside, and Kay had talked about how he appreciated the hospitality, the sacrifice, the life-saving measures taken. He could think of no better gift than Leonardo. Kay had seen how the family had taken to him. So again, he said, "Stay." Then, with his signature laugh, he turned and disappeared. The door did not shut before he could hear the children and Leonardo cheering and laughing. 8 months later, the day had been filled with good food, fun games, and music, and overall, a sense of fellowship amongst all the team. The lodging place had found itself with no guests and no arrivals for a couple days, so management decided to make it a day of thank you to everyone for all the hard work that the team puts in each and every day. It was clearly appreciated, smiles all around, as those that could pitch in to help clean up did. The younger folks were running through a sprinkler that Leonardo had set up just outside the lunch area. The music had been turned off as the DJ and his buddies were taking apart the speakers and stands. Individual conversations, giggles, and laughter were their backdrop now. The sound was first heard by Leonardo. He had asked everyone to be still for a second. He listened, clearly hearing something the others could not. Then he moved towards Trent, not wanting to alarm anyone else. He pulled at Trent's sleeve and turned him away from the now curious crowd. "We should get everyone to the shelter." Before Trent could ask why, the approaching vessel and the horrendous noise that accompanied it were upon them. With a sadness in his voice, Leonardo could only reply, "It's too late." The end. And that concludes our journey, The Lodging Place. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, my name is Monty, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening. The ending, I hope, will lead us into another journey down the road at The Lodging Place with the Stevens family and Leonardo. Have a great day.